This presentation is actually a portion of the presentation that was done in May of 2020 regarding updating plans, plan services, authorizations, and etc. We wanted to pull out the section that focuses solely on how support coordinators should process rejected authorizations. It's important that support coordinators begin monitoring their My Dashboard and looking at the authorizations that are rejected, because until those are processed, the individual's budgets may not be completely accurate and/or it may impact future plan validation. So again, we wanted to just go ahead and pull out that portion related to processing rejected authorizations from our previous presentation and put it together here so that you can just follow the steps when you need to process a rejected authorization.
So the rejected authorizations, holy crap, what are you supposed to do with those? One of the things that you're going to have to do is review the authorized service to see what the reason was for the authorization, because that's going to help you decide which direction to go with the rejected authorization. So as I was saying a moment ago, from your My Dashboard, you can open the list of authorizations, and then from there you can actually click on an authorization itself and be able to drill down. So here we're going to be able to go to the transportation. We can see that the transportation was rejected by looking at the auth service itself. So that's one of the things that you're able to see just from your My Dashboard. Now, you are going to want to see what the error message is for why this service was rejected. So you're going to open it up, and there will be a sub-page for the error message. So in this case, it was that the person wasn't eligible. So what that means is that for the time period that was covered in that authorization, when it was transmitted to FMIS, that on that day, that consumer didn't have their Medicaid eligibility. It had lapsed for some reason. So that's one of the possible reasons. The thing to keep in mind on our rejected authorizations, there's not going to be a PA number. It was rejected. And so that error message that you look at, that you're looking for, will probably fall into one of three workflows. And we're going to go through those on how you handle those. And again, I know it's a lot of information. So everybody take a deep breath and remember, this is being recorded. You'll be able to watch it again, and you're going to have the manual and the handouts for this PowerPoint. And I just say that because we're about halfway through, and I know it's a lot of information. And this is going to be new. I'm not sure how you manage them in iBudget, but I know that this is going to be new for you. Our three reasons are going to be that the rejection is not going to be corrected. Maybe that authorization was transmitted to FMIS in error. The rejection can be corrected by updating the consumer's record or the provider's record. And we're going to go through each one of these, what it is you need to do. Or the rejection can be corrected by updating the plan service. So that's the three general workflows that we're going to follow whenever an authorization is rejected and there is no PA number. So in cases where it was sent to FMIS in error, let's say, for example, maybe the consumer is deceased, and what you meant to do was end that authorization. You're not going to do a lot for those kinds of plans. All you're going to do is use that WFC cost plan adjustment rule, reverse the status, and zero it out. You're going to zero out that plan service. You're going to change total number of units to 0, do file, save, and close. Don't change anything else. And then you're going to rerun the plan validation, and based upon your validation report, determine whether or not it needs to go to region or state office for review. We're not going to use the update authorization functionality on the plan services for these rejections. Okay? That's really important, because if we use the update authorization functionality, that file update authorization, and we transmit it to FIMIS, it's just going to get rejected again, because again, that person should have never gotten, that authorization should have never gone. So instead, once it's passed validation, you're going to send it back to your regional waiver liaison and, and use a cost plan review note, and you're going to ask them to manually update the authorization. So I know we've got some folks on from the regions, and I can already hear you freaking out going, wait, what? Nobody told us about that. This is new. This is brand new functionality, and the workflow has just been added in, that we're going to use this cost plan review note. So when you open the cost plan, the consumer's plans tab, remember we've always had the plan information. This is where we add our plan services. There's a subpage here that we've not really paid a lot of attention to, but this is where we're going to put any of our cost plan review related notes. So as a waiver support coordinator, you're going to click here, and then you're going to click File, Add Note. On the new note, you're going to add your WSC agency or solo provider on the program field, because remember, that's required as a WSC. You're going to say yes to whether or not this is a cost plan review note. Your note type is cost plan review. Your subtype is rejected authorization. And in the description, put something like request to manually update authorization. In the note, you're going to describe exactly what's happened, and you're going to put that note in a pending status, and your recipient is going to be your region waiver liaison. So it's going to look like this. Remember, this is going to be required for you in the WSC role. So, if I work for ABC Support Coordination Agency, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to pick ABC Support Coordination Agency. This is a yes. Note type is cost plan review. Subtype is rejected authorization. Request to manually update authorization. And here I put in some details. I've indicated that it was sent in error, that I've zeroed out the plan service, and I need them to zero out the authorization to match my plan service. And I've added, I'm going to go ahead and use Elizabeth as my example. I've added Elizabeth as my note recipient because she's my liaison in the region. So Elizabeth is actually going to get this note on my dashboard, in her pending notes pane on the consumer column, and she's going to see that. She's going to double check the plan service, and then she's actually going to manually update the authorization on the Authorizations tab in the consumer's record. All she's going to do is set the max units to 0, and that will automatically update the amount approved to 0. So it will look like this. So this is what the plan service looks like. This is what's brought over into the authorization from the plan service. Elizabeth, as my region waiver liaison, she's going to just set this to 0. It automatically sets this to 0. These should already be rejected because it was a rejected authorization in the first place. So you shouldn't have to change these as a region liaison, but you want to make sure that that's what it is. And then from here, you click File, Save, and Close. So that's how that's handled. And what that does is that makes sure that no money is taken from the budget. We've handled the rejected authorization, but we've not transmitted it back to FIMIS because, again, it's only going to get rejected again because it should have never been sent. But the rejections where we can make changes to correct them, we're going, like in the example of a change to the consumer's record or the provider's record, that's something you have the ability to make changes to. So using our example of maybe the consumer's Medicaid lapsed, once the Medicaid is reinstated, you're able to adjust the plan services dates to match when the Medicaid was reinstated, or in cases where maybe there's something just off on the provider's Medicaid ID number. You're not going to be able to fix that, but you are going to be able to notify the provider and say, I don't know why, but there's something up with your ID number and I can't get the authorization. That provider will then work with their regional provider enrollment team to do whatever it is they need to do to fix their Medicaid ID number, and then they'll let you know. So for the consumer that's ineligible, you're going to work with the consumer and the guardian and maybe DCF access to reestablish Medicaid eligibility. And then once that's reestablished, all you're going to do is just update the authorization and have it transmit um, back to FIMIS. Now, I say here there's no need to make changes on the plan service, but that's if it turns out that the Medicaid eligibility is going to cover the whole period of the plan service, of the authorization. If it turns out that by the time you get it reestablished, that it isn't going to cover, let's just say, July, then you are actually going to have to adjust that plan service so the dates match the eligibility. But if it turns out that maybe it was a mistake and they're able to say, oh yeah, that should have never happened, let me turn it right back on for you, then you don't need to make changes to the plan services. You just click on, you go to plan service, you do the reverse status with your WSC cost plan adjustment role, then you go to your plan service and you click on your plan services all the way at the end, the checkbox, and you do File, Update Authorizations. That's all you need to do. And again, as I was saying with the provider record, once the provider has done whatever it is they need to do to correct whatever it is that was off on their provider ID number, they're going to let you know when it's fixed. And on that one, you're going to do the same thing. You're just going to, and I apologize, it's not reverse the status. You don't need to reverse the status for either one of these scenarios. You're just going to do the update authorization on the plan services. So without reversing status, I apologize, I misstated that a minute ago. You're just going to check all the boxes, and then you're going to go File, Update Authorizations. So that's in the scenarios where the consumer's Medicaid was off or the provider ID number was off. You're going to just do this, and what that will do is put all of those authorizations back into what we refer to as a ready to send status so that they will retransmit to FIMIS, and then FIMIS will be able to process them. Sometimes you do have to update the plan service to correct the rejection. And this may be some sort of error, like you might see a duplicate PA number when you go on the rejected authorization and you go to that error message. The message is duplicate PA. And what that means is that there are two or more plan services of the same type for the same provider and the same date range. And I'm going to show you an example. In those cases, you will actually need to use your WSC cost plan adjustment role to reverse the status of the plan and then address those plan services that have caused this duplicate PA error message. So it may be that you have to look at the dates of the service. It may be that perhaps you have personal supports 1-to-1 and personal supports 1-to-2, because sometimes they're home alone and sometimes they're home with a roommate or a sibling, and you might have to adjust that to be personal supports 1-to-1 and the personal supports negotiated rate. So you're going to have to look at those scenario by scenario to figure out exactly what it is that needs to be corrected. In this example, what we're looking at is we've got Res-Hab Live-In with two different ratios. So we've got Res-Hab Live-In from September 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 at a 1-to-2 ratio. We also have Res-Hab Live-In from July 1st to March 31st, 21 at a 1-to-1 ratio. So we've got the same service at two different ratios overlapping. And so what we need to do is take a look at those dates. Well, what the support coordinator had meant to do, it's a simple typo. They meant for the 1-to-1 to be July 1, 2020 through 8/31, 2020, not 3/31, 2021. So it's as simple as updating the end date on the second plan service and running plan validation again. So all they are doing is that when they open the plan service, they adjust the end date from 3/31/2021 to 8/31/2020. They save it, run plan validation, and once it passes validation, come and check this checkbox and update the authorization. The application will automatically update the authorization that's linked to the budget, so there isn't anything else that you're going to need to do on this one, and then it will reset the authorization status to that ready to send status so that it can be transmitted back to FIMIS. And when FIMIS sees it, they'll see that there is no overlap between the two different ratios. Sometimes you're going to cancel a plan service. And again, we have to look at, are you canceling a plan service with claims paid or pending? Or are you canceling plan services with no claims? Because you can't cancel it if there's claims paid. And the system is not going to let you. You will get all kinds of error messages. So don't panic. If you go down the wrong road, you'll get an error message, and you can back it up and fix it. So, but one of the things that you will have to do is when you are canceling plan services, you will update the plan service, edit it and update the authorizations, and it's the same workflow that was on slides 13 through 16, so I'm not going to go through those again. And but you can only do this with a plan service that does not have paid claims. So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I know it sounds confusing. With anything else you're doing with making changes to your cost plan, you're going to use your WSC cost plan adjustment role. You're going to reverse the status back to draft, and then open the plan service that you want to terminate. And again, this is a plan service that you are canceling that does not have claims. So you're going to reset the total number of units to 0. You're going to update your comments and add in the word terminated, and you're going to change your plan service status to terminated. So right now, when you open it, because it's a migrated plan, it will say that the plan service status is region review approved. You're going to change it from region review approved to terminated. Let me give you a visual on that. So here we are. We've opened the service. We zeroed out the total number of units, which automatically then zeroed out the dollar amount. We've added in the comment for terminated, and we've changed the plan service status to terminated. Now you're going to go through the process of running validation again. And if it needs to go to region or state office review based upon your validation report, you follow the steps that we went through before in terms of, if it's a region review, you change the worker on the plan to your regional contact, and you change add the region in for the queue at the bottom of the plan's detail. If it's state office, you don't change the worker, and you add state office versus the region in the drop-down list. The region or state office will conduct their review, and then once the plan is approved and validated, it'll be routed back to you to update the authorization, you as the waiver support coordinator. So when you go to update the authorization, you may get a warning message if you're trying to cancel a planned service with paid claims. So remember what I said, you can't do it wrong unless you ignore that warning. If you ignore that warning, then you are doing it wrong. If it says that you've got paid claims, then you need to update that plan service back to what it originally was, and go back to slide 12 to set it back to editing it to its original state. If you ignore it and go ahead and follow through, your cancellation is going to be rejected, and then you'll have to follow that whole rejected authorizations workflow that we went through on the other slide. So my recommendation is, when you get the warning that there's paid claims, don't ignore it. Maybe you checked it and you said, no, I didn't see any claims. But if there's claims, the system will tell you. So don't ignore it. Back it up, reset it to its original state, and follow a different path. Maybe it's that you need to end it rather than cancel it. So you're changing the end date and you're leaving the status as region review approved and going through that process of editing a service where you're changing the end date as opposed to changing the status to terminated. If there are no claims, then you won't get the error message. You'll be able to go through this whole workflow and you'll be able to update the authorization, which will then transmit it to FMIS, and FMIS will process it. If FMIS approves the cancellation, then it will change the max amount on the authorization to $0 and add that money back into the consumer's budget. And the auth status, the auth EDI status and the auth status will be updated to terminated. This is when FMIS approves your cancellation. If FMIS rejects your cancellation, everything is updated to rejected, canceled will equal no, and the max amount is not changed, and no money is added back into the consumer's budget. And again, if it's canceling the rejection, it's probably because you were trying to do a cancellation on a planned service with claims. So you'll have to go through then back to the slides on rejected authorizations and work through the error message and follow that workflow. So here's the rejected cancellations. One of these 3 reasons is probably why you're getting that rejected cancellation. Big one is going to be the paid claims exist. You might have an invalid begin date, or the cancellation was sent in error. So if paid claims exist, then you have to ask yourself, was the service provided and are the claims valid? And if the answer is yes, then that authorization should not have been canceled. Maybe the planned service should have been ended and the total units reduced to cover what's been delivered as a service and billed, but it should not have been changed to terminated on the planned service status. If the claims are not valid, then that means that the provider submitted a claim in error. And so you're going to have to work with that provider to get them to void the claim. And then once the claims are voided, you're able to update the authorization and transmit again to FMIS. For an invalid begin date, all you'll do is open that planned service. Again, you've used your WSC cost plan adjustment role. You've reversed the status back to draft. And then you're going to go ahead and open that planned service and you're going to adjust the begin date. And you won't change anything else. Everything else will automatically calculate and you'll rerun validation. Now, because you're changing the begin date, this plan is going to automatically require region review. So you will need to follow that pending plans queue process and route it to your regional office. And if there are other services that need to go to state office, then the region will route it to them. But you are going to have to follow that process every single time if you need to change the begin date. Only the region office can approve a change on the begin date. And once it's past validation, either at the region and or state office review level, it will come back to you. Remember, you're on your My Dashboard in that pending plans queue. You're opening that, changing the filter to approved so that you can see the status of the plans that you've sent on for region or state office review. So once it's approved, it's going to come back to you and you'll be able to then go ahead and update the authorizations and retransmit them to FMIS. For authorizations that were canceled in error, it's as simple as you using that WSC cost plan adjustment role, reversing the status on the plan, opening that plan service, and setting everything back to its original state. Set the total units back to the original number. The max amount will automatically update. In your comments, update it. I terminated this one in error. The termination was sent in error, and change your plan service status back to approved. Remember, if it already shows region review approved, don't change it. If it doesn't show region review approved, then your only option will be approved. And this is going to, through the plan validation process, probably require a region review. run your plan validation, route to region or state office if necessary, and then once it passes validation, you're going to go ahead and this is another time where you will be sending that cost plan review note to your region liaison, asking them to manually update the authorization. So there are 2 times that we're doing that, once in the rejected authorization workflow, and then here in the rejected cancellation workflow. So what you'll do is, using that cost plan review note, you're going to use the same note type and subtype, and you're also just going to go through the exact same steps. You're going to put in the request to manually update the authorization. You're going to describe what happened in the note field, change the status to pending, and add your region waiver liaison as the note recipient so that this will land on My Dashboard. So this is just a visual of what it looks like. And in this scenario, what we're saying here is that it was canceled in error. I've updated the plan service back to its original dates. Please update the authorization to match my plan service. Your region waiver liaison will have the ability to then go and update the authorization. So what the region will do is they're going to update these fields. And so for our regional folks that are on the call today, what you're going to do is open that plan service and look at what's in the plan service, and then you're going to update these fields to match the plan service. So your total number of units should match the original units approved, and that should be on the updated plan service. You won't need to make any change to the amount approved. The auth service status, if it doesn't already say restored, you're going to change it to restored. And then the auth service EDI status, you don't need to change this. It will update to approved when you save this record. And then the WSCs will be able to see this on their My Dashboard in the authorizations, and it will be in the approved authorizations.
This concludes our presentation regarding processing rejected authorizations. If you have additional questions, comments, or need further guidance, please reach out to your local region waiver liaison. Thank you.